Hello, I'm Larry Johnson, and welcome to this latest episode of the International Unity Club and the dialogue that we're promoting with some luminaries from across Russia. Now, I'm fortunate today. We've got my new friend Alexander Babakov with us. This will be our third conversation, I believe, third or fourth. So it's always a pleasure to meet with Mr. Babakov. He's the vice speaker of the State Duma of Russia, and he's an economist. And so there's several things I want to talk to him about today. Mr. Babakov, Alexander, how are you?
Да, добрый день.
Yes, I'm well.
Все
How are
хорошо.
you?
Надеюсь, и у вас все хорошо.
Yeah, I'm cold. I live in Florida. It's supposed to be warm all the time. It's now down around 11 degrees Celsius, which for us is like living in the Arctic.
Привыкайте.
Yeah. Well, I need to come back to Russia to get accustomed to a little bit of the cold. It's actually it may be warmer in Moscow than it is in Florida. Uh, let's start with the issue of negotiations between the United States and Russia, particularly the talks that have taken place between President Putin and his team is with Stephen Witkoff, Jared Kushner. Do do you think there is any viable path forward with these negotiations?
Well, we have
Неоднократно высказывали свои
spoken many times. So,
политические деятели, в
Minister
частности,
of Foreign
министр
Affairs,
иностранных дел,
the Secretary of our
секретарь
President,
нашего президента
Mr. Peskov,
Песков,
saying that
исходя
we
из
are
того,
not
что
the
мы не
participant
являемся
of the
участниками
peaceful
переговорного
negotiations. It's
процесса,
hard to say about some
сложно
details,
говорить в
but
деталях, но об общей
total
тональности,
language,
направленности,
directions,
наверное, имеет смысл
we can more or less highlight them. If we
Если
try
мы
to
попробуем
fix,
зафиксировать
discuss
ключевые
the key
моменты,
moments
переговорный процесс, направленный на
to
урегулирование
regulate the, in
дипломатических
diplomatic way, all the
террорного
situation that is developing in
ситуации, которая
Ukraine,
развивается на
it all
Украине, сводится
comes
к тому,
to
что
they have to
э,
take away the first
должны быть
reasons of the
устранены
conflict.
первопричины этого конфликта.
Um, Whatever
И
we
что бы
say,
ни
whatever
говорили и
experts will
какие бы
be
эксперты
talking
ни
about, the
выступали
key
на эту
things
тему,
would be number one.
ключевым
Do
должно быть
we understand
правильное
correct the
понимание
reasons of the
первопричин
conflict?
конфликта
Do we
и правильно ли
understand
мы
the right
понимаем подход
methods
к
or
устранению первопричин.
access? How do we
Все
take
остальное,
away
на мой
those
взгляд, является
principal
достаточно,
keys
если не
of the
деструктивным, то
conflict,
не имеющим
principal
большого
issues?
смысла, потому что
To
обсуждать
continue on to
какие-то
discuss the
территории Украины,
territories
обсуждать какие-то
or initiatives
инициативы,
connected
связанные
with
с
guarantees
гарантией
of safety,
безопасности, это
these are
все
all
вторичные
secondary.
вещи,
They will
которые
not
не влияют
influence
на устранение
the very
причин
first
этого
reasons of the
конфликта. А
conflict.
причины или первопричины этого
As
конфликта, как мы
we
неоднократно
mentioned that
говорили,
earlier
здесь
many
стоит еще раз
times,
зафиксировать, является
this is the root cause.
безудержное приближение
That's
границ НАТО
NATO
и границ
moving
России.
close to
Это
Russia.
ключевой момент,
The root
потому что
cause, this
вот это
is the number
движение,
one
не
issue. This
учитывающее
movement does
позицию
not
России, ее
count in the
мнение,
position
ее
of
право
Russia,
на
its
суверенитет,
right for sovereignty, and it
привело к
brought us
тому,
to the
что
situation where we have
неоднократные
a lot
предупреждения нашего
of
президента,
prompts, a lot of
соответственно,
warnings
команды
from our
не были
team, from our
услышаны
president.
Западом.
The West did not
И
hear us.
мы были
This
вынуждены
is why
начать
we
специальную
had to
военную
start
операцию,
this special
поскольку
military
Украина
operation
в лице
because
той
Ukraine is
верхушки
represented by that leadership that they
политического
have
руководства, которое
now
сегодня
today.
олицетворяет собой фактически
More or
нацистский
less
режим,
it is a Nazis regime
захвативший
that
власть
took
с
the
помощью
power
Запада
with the help
незаконно,
of
они
the
привели к тому, что
West,
сами
and where
действия привели к тому,
their
что они
activity they
не только
brought
не возражали против
to
этого, они
power
стремились
this
к тому,
regime,
чтобы обеспечить
they brought
приближение
this
уже реальных вооруженных сил
weaponry
к
strength,
дверям
resources
восточных
right
границ.
to the door
Ну а когда
entering
мы начали
Russia,
специальную военную
and we
операцию,
started this
то
special
решение
operation,
президента
and
таково,
that's
что
when we
открылись еще,
faced
кроме того, что
that
есть
not
не
only that
учитывая
there is a
стремление России
movement
к
of Russia
движению
that
НАТО в
does
сторону
not counter
России,
Russia's point of view,
мы не
but we
столкнулись
also
еще с тем, что,
faced the
оказывается,
ideology of the
идеология
regime
режима,
that
который
today is
сегодня
in
господствует на Украине,
Ukraine
она
that's
все
totally
противоречит
against all
интересам
the ideas of the
человечества и
humanity
базируется на
and
тех принципах,
based on the
которым
positions
было дано жесткое
were
оценки
what
в
we
1945
judged
году
in
на Нюрнбергском
Nuremberg's
процессе.
process
Поэтому
in
тут уже
1945.
совокупность фактов.
We judged that, so
А
it
учитывая,
raised its
что
head
в
back up
процессе
again,
специальной военной
and a
операции
special
Украина
operation in Ukraine that took place, and they lost their sovereignty because they have no weapons, no money, no strength, no economy. Everything is done because of the help and support of Europe and in some ways United States. All that brought that we have and see this rhetorics of the Western countries that is changing. Remember 2022. Political powers, political elites of Europe and Western countries, they wanted to destroy Russia. Today we see at the battlefield and diplomatic, economical positions and other cases, this rhetorics went into nowhere, into past. And European leaders today are trying to come out from the very complicated situation that they have created for themselves. So speaking how and where the negotiations would take place, if these negotiations would be directed to take out the root cause, then yes, Russia will actively and promptly act. Everything up to the president to decide, but I think he would not agree to discuss any other positions because they don't, they have no influence, no weight to it. But what we see with these negotiations, we see that United States is the only Western country that still has looking for ways out, looking for peaceful resolutions of the conflict, and it all takes place with the background of other spectrum of questions, with a total global situation and Russian-American direct relationship and diplomacy, economics, and others. So even this signal that we received that they are ready to have a parliamentary connection, that's all good. It's a good sign. We have to greet it. We have to greet it like with a double strength, because the United States is the center that is able to bring solution to the table and take away the root cause.
Now, here's the problem I have. I don't have a problem with what you've said, but looking at my country and seeing what is being said by legislators who are in positions just like you are with respect to the Duma, there is no desire, there's no political support to negotiate, to have a peace settlement with Russia. The language is almost universally antagonistic. And, I think whatever agreement could be reached, let's just assume that there was an agreement reached between Trump and Putin. There's no guarantee that the legislators in both the Senate and House would accept that as that agreement. And once Trump is gone from office, there's nothing binding there to keep that agreement in place, assuming that there was a possibility of getting to an agreement. Do you understand that there really is an antagonism on this side? And that's one of the reasons I interact with the International Unity Club and others, trying to break down, trying to educate Americans. But that's they're stubborn on this side. They believe that you're still a communist society and intent on conquering the world.
I would. There's a lot of, you've touched a lot of strings. I like them. I don't even know what would be the priority, but I would start probably from the most crucial one. Of course, we realize the situation. Of course, we understand that internal policies and they're very different from what we have in Russia, due to many circumstances, and because of also understanding, realizing the core of the special operation. Russian people are united around the president. They have a colossal level, huge level of support, and the decisions that the leaders of the country take, they will find support in the majority of people in Russia and institutes of power. And of course the legislators like State Duma, that is representing the interest of all regions of Russia and citizens of Russia, because that's all the political parties are there in State Duma that went through the certain barrier. We understand that, and we wanted for sure to have an agreement, but maybe not a total agreement, but a clear, detailed terms where all these institutes will continue to work, not depending on personality. We clearly understand, both you and I, to destruct these institutes and the attempts of American power to take out United Nations. This is all what hate as a boomerang back. And in a way, it does come back already now to those people who execute those decisions. Without agreed, established rules of communication and principles of working together, like discussion of the international the politics, the national security, it's hard to find those agreements that could be there. So if everything is done minute by minute, if everything is based on a military power, that's not a good fact. Today you're weak, tomorrow today you're strong, tomorrow you're weak. And if you don't build these terms and relations, everything would seem having no sin, and people can do what they want to do. Definitely our leadership is concerned about that, and I think all healthy-minded people, they think about those ways and situations. And maybe even some people treat Russia negatively, but even with the purpose of safety and their own interest, to look for ways that would help to establish, root down those terms. Humanity has such awful types of instruments to destroy itself, as like nuclear weapon, nuclear power. They cannot live and survive without counting in the point of view of the neighbor. Might not be friends, but respect each other. Respect the right of each person for his or her own position, and find in complicated things the compromise for a long-term relationship. If we depend from the today's situation, from this minute, and now this dependency is very dangerous. It is very short time-wise, and it's also dangerous that there's no principles of self-protection, and that somebody would continue with the cause. So we cannot allow it to take place. So our objective is to find such points that would allow us to communicate with each other, participate in forming and rooting what we have, and if there's a need of forming of new institutes, but basing on the principles of mutual respect for each other.
Let me clarify one point. I'll tell you my interpretation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I would appreciate the correction. There is the belief within the Trump administration and among many in the media in the United States that Russia is willing to cut a deal in which they will give up claims on Zaporizhia, Kherson. You know, that if Ukraine withdraws from the Donbass, Donetsk and Luhansk, that Russia is willing to make a deal with respect to Zaporizhia and Kherson. My understanding is that when those new republics of Russia voted in September of 2022 to join the Russian Federation, and that your legislative body, the Duma, accepted those results, that Vladimir Putin has no legal authority to negotiate them away, to say, okay, we'll give that back to Ukraine. Am I correct on that, or am I incorrect?
The republics, the new territories that have joined Russia, they are now not legislatively Russian. The constitution was changed, and they became a full members of Russian Federation.
Российской Федерации. Поэтому
To say that we're ready to give up something, really, I'm not a participant of those negotiations, but I cannot imagine us
ради этих
to
договоренностей
change those terms of
маловероятно.
constitution
Скорее
just
всего,
due to the mutual
и, понимаете, вот
dialogue.
когда Запад
When West
постоянно
talks
говорит
about the
о
territories,
территориальных вопросах,
they again
он подчеркивает,
highlight
что он
that they are in a
глубоко
deep
в заблуждении
mistake
реальных причин
of the
этого конфликта.
reasons or
Что
root
Россия
causes of the
проводит специальную
conflict.
операцию
You
ради
really think that Russia is fighting for the territories all this war? Of course not.
На самом деле,
We
20
have
лет
to look
глубоко в
deeply
историю,
in
да, и даже не
history.
очень
Not even
глубоко в
don't go
историю.
that deep.
Даже,
Let's look at
например, в
2014. In 2014,
когда
when they had
военный
military
переворот в
coup
Киеве,
revolution
то
in
сам
Kiev,
фактически
Kiev itself
отказался,
refused
он
from the
объявил
territory.
войну
They
собственной
announced a war for their own people,
территории.
against their own
И в
people.
течение
And in
8
8
лет
years, what they
осуществлял,
did,
я
there
не
was a
боюсь этого слова,
genocide against their own people that were living in those territories. Only under one reason, is just because they did not want to live with the regime that won the revolution. They did not want to be inside the territories. They did not allow us to speak the language, teach the children, and be a self-sufficient coming out of the history and practical situation. Against those people, Kiev revolutionary regime, that fascist anarchy, they started the war. They bombed them, they killed them, they blew them, and they came to the position where they could not hold anymore. They had a referendum voting. They announced
самодостаточности и обратились к России с просьбой принять
they would,
Российскую Федерацию.
you know, they would never leave the Russian Federation. That's not a question even for today, to be clear. We're not trying to increase the territories. It has enough territories. It's enough of what we have. But the point is that we had to help to the people that came to ask help from us. For that help, we also have the problem of how to take out the Nazis that are there now in Kiev. They are the evil, not just for Ukraine, but also for other people.
Yeah. Now, let me share with you, you may find this ridiculous. I do, sort of. But as you've watched Trump and his actions now making a claim on Greenland and the rejecting Denmark as, talking about a military attack on Denmark, I imagine from the Russian standpoint, we call it sitting in the movie theater eating popcorn, just enjoying the show. But I wonder, in the back of my mind, I wonder if going to the root causes of this conflict, which is NATO, NATO actually needs to be destroyed, disbanded. Once NATO disappears, much of the problems that have been they've been trying to create for Russia will disappear. And I've just wondered if, in the talks between Trump and Putin back in Anchorage, if Donald Trump said, "Okay, look, I'll blow up NATO from the inside." Okay, I do that, and that maybe they cut some elaborate deal. Do you think that there's any possibility of that? Because I can't explain otherwise this erratic, crazy behavior by Donald Trump.
I'm not, again, I repeat myself, I'm not a participant. I cannot approve, but, or I can say no. I think that we did not have such a question to destroy NATO. We wanted NATO to get back to its position of 1997 and kind of get the head on. We need to remember why NATO was created and who was it against these policies. If it was against the Warsaw contract, the Warsaw contract does not exist anymore. NATO is there, and Russia was. And Russia said, okay, to take out these problems, we can join NATO. But we understood clearly that the West took us and our politicians in Russia as its own, they did not respect us. I talked to many politicians at those time in European Union in the beginning of 2000. I constantly heard that NATO is moving towards Russia because because there's a threat from Iran. But interestingly, they didn't move against Iran towards Iran. They moved towards Russia. It was a political threat. They showed a great disrespect to Russia. And they have seen double standards, that you can do everything, we can do nothing. And today we have faced that Europe today that behave like that, with a clear mind or not, but Trump pulled Europe back at its place. He demonstrated how weak they are, no subjectivity, they have no knowledge in the world politics. I don't want to say anything bad, but my personal opinion of what takes place with Greenland, it is definitely a personal deal from United States of America, but we have to thank Trump that he showed to the whole world today's level and equality of the political power in the EU. It was good for everybody to see that, for Europe, for America, for the whole world, to understand that whatever they say with their mouth costs nothing. And they can't even solve their own issues. They can't say and stay in their own position. They change it 10% or 100% of fees. Whether they are able to meet Trump personally or not, this is a very unrespectful and a pity party looking view. And of course, we are concerned about the following, that such types of steps, even counting Europe and America, but such type of attempts to solve the situation with political power, other powers, to ignore every possible conditions, contracts, and standing against those international institutes. Of course, they bother Russia. The institutes that were called to keep the safety and the fragile agreements, they're very dangerous.
I want to shift to the economic side of the house for a second. Are you familiar with the investigative journalist Seymour Hersh? And so you may have seen he just wrote a piece last week. And let me say up front, I've been good friends with Cy Hersh for 45 years, but he's mad at me right now because he wrote this ridiculous article. And what's informative about it is he was talking to someone from the intelligence community, I think from the CIA. And so this reflected the views of the CIA about the Russian economy. And it was one lie upon another, that businesses are closing, shortages in stores, that 2 weeks ago, the internet and cell phones were shut down across Russia. And I tried to tell Cy, I said, Cy, I've been in communication with people who were in Russia over the weekend. They had access to internet and cell phone. This is ridiculous. But the United States really believes that the Russian economy is weak. And all I've got to do is destroy a few oil refineries and keep the sanctions on, and Russia's going to collapse. How do you react to that?
I would say that I feel very sorry that people at a certain level of professionalism and professional knowledge at this or that area allow themselves to speak so naive and politically uneducated point of view. I can send a plane, pay for the plane ticket, let him come here, go to the stores, we'll go to theaters, museums, not just stores. We'll take a walk amongst Moscow regions, Moscow neighborhoods. It's official offer from myself to him. And real situation, I can tell you that today Russia It's more like has a deficit not in materials, not in products, but more or less European and American guests. We have so many Asians and so people coming from India, Asia, Iran, and everywhere, China. If you come to Moscow, if you take a look, we look at the hotels that are overfull. They're interested in the Russian climate, culture, history. They're full in these hotels. And I am at peace here because you can feel sorry for people that cannot visit Russia or don't want to visit Russia. Using the stone, that means only one thing, that people want to carry their own people into a mistaken point of view. We're not trying to analyze how Americans live, or we get sometimes the information, sometimes the detailed information, but we respect American people and the people of any country. Sometimes it doesn't get along with the positions of the politicians, but if we talk about real numbers, that only for 3 years of the special military operation, the GDP of Russia went up 50%. Of course, you can discuss it in different terms. Clearly, everybody has different scales, price scaling, different currencies, instruments. But if you look at the key points, any economist that would try to connect to our conversation now, that he would understand exactly what to talk about. First of all, these are concrete facts. The speed of growth in 3 years was like 3% a year, as an average. That's not small.
Right.
And if we talk about real income, and economists understand it, minus the inflation, right? The real income. They went up from 15 to 18%. We have a jobless level at the lowest level ever. We have jobs. So I call these numbers not because that we want to stand against our level of economical success against other countries. No, we have a lot of problems, but these problems are positive, they're creative. What do we discuss now? We discuss, for example, a global infrastructure projects. We discuss projects connected with growing of the electrical energy capacities. We are discussing how to go to drone systems in many, like for example, agricultural, railroads. If we would pay attention and time to these issues, we would quickly and clearly explain that we are in positive development for our economy. If we speak about what we want to do, we want to reorient the Russian economy from that way that was characterized for the beginning of how Russia was establishing. And I want to say to American economists, probably more to them, that what Russia was before, 25 years ago, maybe more, 30 years ago, it has changed cardinally. Even in one aspect, key aspect, how we supply the raw materials. Everybody thinks that Russia is a country that supplied oil, gas, and other materials to the world market. Yes, we do that. We supply it in a huge volume. But I think for them, that the income of the Russian budget from the exports industries, then that is less than 18%, which means 82% of the Russian budget is created outside of the industry, raw materials, agriculture, transport, real economy sectors. And I think that these numbers are very clear for all those who are trying to represent Russia as a weak, unable to its own development. We don't discuss it anymore. we discuss on how to create a better efficiency of those projects.